Hello, everyone. Hello, one and all. Welcome to another episode of Talking Tunes with Toys. I am your host, Barney the Dinosaur. Eh, Welcome to another episode of Talking Tunes with Toys. I am Barney the Dinosaur, your host. Still trying to get the hang of all this podcast stuff. And joining me are, of course, my co-hosts SpongeBob and SpongeBob and SquarePants. Oh yeah, if you don't know me, I am Barney the Dinosaur from Barney and Friends, or if you know me from Adventure in the Trio, either one. And I am joined by two co-hosts from Adventures in the Trio, SpongeBob and SpongeBob and SquarePants. Hi everybody! Hello, you lovely people. I am SpongeBob SquarePants. If you didn't already know. Oh yeah, and I'm SpongeBob SquarePants. If you didn't know that, I wasn't sure if people knew. Well, here's the question: can people distinguish who we are if we don't say, exactly who we are? Like if you're watching the video version of this, as you can easily see, the icon bubbles, switch in and out of them. But if you're just listening to us, how would you know who is who? Like I know we share the same voice, but I mean, I feel like there's just a little like distinction between the two of us. So I don't know. How I would describe it is like those like dog whistles, those where you blow into it and all the dogs can hear, and it's like this, like high pitched like shrill, like the little like loud pitched shrill voice that make dogs go like crazy and irritated because it's so annoying. That's what I say when I distinguish you guys' voice. Oh, thanks, Barney. I love that compliment. Yeah, whatever you want to believe. But I mean, yeah, everyone is different. Everyone is an individual. That's why we have this podcast because this is Talking Tunes with Toys, where we show, well, not show, but like we talk about the various cartoons that are in the realm of animation, whether they're a show or movie. That some would consider niche or less obscure or less mainstream or whatever because you know of course the general public can like something, but everybody's different and everyone is their own person. I mean, except the SpongeBob's to some extent because they basically share one part of one brain. But yeah, individuals have different tastes and different styles for everything, including cartoons and animation, like this guest that we have on. Folks, I'm very excited to bring this guest in, and this is an online streamer that goes by the name of Tyrant. Ladies and gentlemen, Julius Crawford Sidney.
It's a pleasure to be here, Barney, and thank you for having me this evening.
A pleasure to have you, JC. A pleasure to have you. Now, the question I have right off the bat: where did the name Tyrant come from?
It came from my grandmother who tried to pronounce tempura for a solid 10 minutes before saying, and I quote, "Do you want to eat a tyrant?" And then I just kind of ran with it.
I love that. I love that. And I'm not even just saying that because tyrant is short for like Tyrannosaurus Rex. I just thought that was funny. But anyway, I'm glad to have you here, and we're really excited to talk about cartoons with you.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So before we get into it, I just want to ask, generally, what are some of the general interests of cartoons for you? Like, what were some of the general interests that you really gravitated to when it comes to cartoons and animation, and what were sort of the things that really influenced you throughout your life?
Well, I felt animation was a good medium, and as a kid, I'd like to draw. I wanted to be in animation, but that didn't end up happening. I just love how it can be used as a medium to tell all types of stories from all types of people and how versatile the medium truly is and what it can truly do for people's art.
Well, I love that. And that versatility definitely came in with the show that you chose because today we are choosing. Oh boy, this is an interesting one because look, I will say we've done a couple episodes of the podcast so far where so far we've been fairly familiar with the show topics that our guests have chosen, but this one really threw us for a loop because we didn't even know this show even existed, let alone the title alone just getting to us. Ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about the show Grossology. And yes, I said that correctly. Grossology, Gross This is a fascinating one, and I'm very glad and I'm very excited that you chose this because, again, we had no idea about the show, but the title alone just fascinated us.
I'm glad you like it. It's one of those shows that if you weren't around when it was that time in the 2000s when anything kind of went, and the show itself is just proof that you can have an idea, but you can also improve upon your idea when you find the right inspiration.
I love that. And we're definitely going to get into that era of cartoons and animation. But before we do, just to give people a little idea of what this show is, we have a segment here. This is actually a new segment that we're doing on the podcast. Look at us. We're leveling up here, people, if you're listening. Yes, we have a segment on this podcast where SpongeBob will give us a brief synopsis on what grossology is for the people that may not know what it is in this new segment that we're calling Brief Bob. Brief Bob. When talking about creating an animated show that's both educational and entertaining, the goalposts go wide. Some notable examples include the Magic School Bus, which focuses on science and discovery, Wildcrats, which focuses on wildlife and environmental conservation. And then when you get to the science of disease and biology, you get Grossology. Inspired by the best-selling book of the series of the same name, Grossology the show focuses on a sibling duo that gets recruited by a secret government agency known as the Bureau of Grossology and fights crimes that primarily focus on filth, bodily abnormalities, and quote, too gross for adults. The show has been credited for its witty story writing and its plots that are based on actual scientific facts and research. So that's grossology. And I should mention, if you want to look firsthand at the gross science and biology of the human body, go check out the Grossology Museum exhibit coming to a children's science museum near you that I'm pretty certain no longer exists because we checked. And that sounds like we're insulting it, but we were legitimately interested because that sounded awesome to us. Okay, now the first question I have right off the bat, JC, did you ever go to this museum when it was around, when it was still around?
So, fun fact, I do believe as a child I did get to go see the exhibit, but because the entire museum experience as a whole was a little bit on the traumatic side, I kind of don't remember it too well. It was a museum that was basically inside of a human body, and this was the only non-human body section. And I mean, the human mouth is only so beautiful from the outside. Once you're inside it, all that wonder goes out the window.
Sure, sure. And I mean, you can kind of make an argument for that in Grossology. Now, it sounds like we're digging the show, but honestly, it's a fun ride. It was a fun ride. We had a fun time watching this show because again, we'd never heard of this show, so the title was fascinating to us, let alone the actual premise that it involved. But let's just get into it. So I just want to hear from you, JC. What about this show is a guilty pleasure for you? Like, what makes the show a guilty pleasure for you?
How well the villains are written. If you were to say any of these villains' premises out loud, you'd probably get a look of, well, that's interesting. That doesn't sound too scary. But then when you see what they're doing in show, it's the horror of just how nonsensical it is just starts to fade away. And you just get left with, that's morbid. And this is a kid's show.
To be clear for the people watching, he's talking about the villains on the show, and we mentioned that the show is based on filth and bodily abnormalities and gross stuff. All of these villains are based on every single one of those things. It's wild. Like, I don't know, JC, can you rattle off some of these villain names for the people that will know?
The names and why they're so scary, or just their names solely based off that?
I think just the names to give people an idea of what we're talking about.
We have Arachnidia, Insectiva, Lance Boyle.
Yeah. and
Yeah,
all these. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah. You were about to say what I was about to say.
Yeah, Sloppy Joe. I think there was like a pink guy villain. I forget exactly the name, but yeah, yeah. It's a slew of villains, and yeah. What I will say, one of the things that I found very fascinating about this show and the entire premise of it is the bold swings that it took with A, trying to make sure that it was entertaining, and B, trying to make sure that it was based on actual scientific facts, based on all these gross stuff that was being presented in the show. It reminded me a lot about the cartoon shows of the early 2000s.
Oh, I agree. It was a different time.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I will say, hey, I mean, SpongeBob's. I know you're gonna hate this, but you gotta admit, Cartoon Network definitely had like a level up when it came to like have taken those bold swings when it comes to the cartoons they watch. Like, I'll give you guys the '90s. I'll give you guys the '90s, because yeah, that was another time. But you can't deny, in the early 2000s, while Nickelodeon kind of veered away from all that, Cartoon Network only just embraced that with shows like Dexter's Laboratory or Courage the Cowardly Dog or Foster's or Conan Kids or whatever, or Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. All those shows. I don't know. Am I out of line for saying that, JC?
I'd say so. It was around the time that Nickelodeon was leaving its infancy and trying to stay grounded, and Cartoon Network was about ready to push boundaries.
Fair enough. I will give you that. I will give it that. And I'm not hating. I'm not hating because yeah, at that time, Cartoon Network had a lot of interesting stuff in there. So I'll give you that. So obviously, the show wasn't perfect. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about this. So JC, what do you think were some of the lesser quality aspects of Grossology that makes it not as mainstream as it should be?
Well, from a show standpoint, it was the fact that the show introduced a lot of cool villains and only got one-off episodes, and one of its main story arcs, overarching story arcs for the series, got canceled after the first season because they didn't think they were even going to get a second season, so they didn't even try to dip back into it. As well as the fact that domestically it only aired on the Discovery Kids Network back when that was a thing, but internationally it was aired all over the place, which is why it's not so known well in the States, but internationally it's a lot more well known.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up because yeah, it was another thing that we considered fascinating was that this aired on Discovery Kids, which for people that don't know, Discovery Kids was the home to cartoons like Transformers Rescue Bots, Pound Puppies, Littlest Pet Shop, and of course was the catalyst for My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic. So just that genre of cartoons mashed with a show like this, it is kind of tough to see how all that aligns. Again, it goes back to Cartoon Network. Like, JC, I'll let this to you. Do you feel like if the show aired in any other channel besides Discovery Kids, do you think it would have done better or worse? Like on Cartoon Network, for example, or God will on PBS Kids.
So the irony is, internationally, this show did air on Nickelodeon. And it was one of the better shows in its time slot, which is how it got that second season.
Hello, eat it, Barney, eat it. We can take big swings like that.
The only problem is PBS wouldn't allow it. It is too childish for PBS, but not childish enough for Cartoon Network. It was one of those things where it teetered on what was acceptable to show and what wasn't acceptable. It had its moments where it went completely out of pockets, and then moments where it just violently just backpedaled back into the safety.
I mean, too childish. I would argue that a lot of the concepts that were displayed on this show, I don't think you can display that nowadays, especially in children's programming. Like, I don't think there's an area of children's television animation where you can openly talk about in detail about an anus or rectum in detail plus have an in-depth view of a colonoscopy. I don't think that's something that can be shown in nowadays, no matter which channel you're talking about.
That's true. It was a different time, a much more bold time. Honestly, I feel the show it hasn't aged well in a few aspects, and that was one of the things about it that made it so controversial. It was gross, but it never got too gross for at least the intended audience they felt. And bear in mind, this show was made in Canada by Nelvana, which is why they were able to get away with so much. This wasn't an American production.
Right? Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So obviously a lot of stuff to talk about on why it didn't last too long. But now let's talk about some of the good aspects. So what do you think are some of the pros that makes this show worth watching despite all those other cons?
Hmm. I guess I guess in a weird way, I guess starting with the best thing, the music. The original
Mm-hmm.
soundtrack for Grossology sounded kind of like a modem that was not doing so well. But then after the artist, the original woman who wrote the books, she saw a little movie that basically changed how she did it, and it went from recycled noise to just jazz, nothing but jazz. That organ hits different.
Mm-hmm. One thing that we've learned from a couple of podcast episodes we've done with shows like this is that music can sell the interest of a TV show, particularly in their theme songs. Like you have a good theme song that can very much elevate a TV show, regardless of what it is or what it's about. Right. And this theme song was definitely one of those where it was just, oh yeah, it's catchy, it's exciting, and the visuals, oh my god, the visuals were incredible.
It's ironic you say that because the reason it looks the way it does is because the author saw The Incredibles and then immediately went back and said, "I want something like that."
I was about to say, because yeah, when we saw the theme song, we tried to do research to see if there was some like connector to the Incredibles and Grossology, maybe like and like the creator worked on the Incredibles or like the writers on the Incredibles, and we couldn't find that. But what we did find, which was very interesting, was that both Grossology and Incredibles and a lot of shows, a lot of movies like in the past were actually inspired by a very well-known filmmaker and artist called Saul Bass, who was actually
Mm-hmm.
responsible for a lot of like posters and like imagery for various films. Like I'll show you that this is another big thing I think we've never done on the podcast before, but we're actually going to show you a little some of his work. Like the name is Saul Bass, and he made stuff like this. A lot of them were made for Alfred Hitchcock and things like that. But yeah, he made stuff like this. Hmm. And for the people that are just listening, and we are actually showing JC actual like movie poster images, has that Bass actually created, and one of them is actually for the movie Vertigo from Alfred Hitchcock. Again, you won't know if you see the video but if you're interested, just type in Saul Bass. That's SaulBass, and you'll find all of these. We just found it so interesting that uh, that the creator was so inspired by things like The Incredibles, not knowing that The Incredibles was also inspired by this very same artist. Yeah, it doesn't pertain to any like big things. That was just something interesting that we discovered. So now, JC, what do you think are the selling points? Like, if you were to name an episode or an arc or a story or a scene or whatever that you're trying to convince the people that this is a show worth watching, what is the sell? What is the episode or whatever that you try to point people to if they're interested in a show like this?
So there are two options that absolutely, no, three if you count three, but the absolute best one I'd say would be the this shows everything the series does well as the fact that this shows just how the stakes go. Because in every episode, the plot it starts out really silly and nonsensical, but then by the end you're going, this is insane. This is intense. We don't need the kids to do this. We need the Navy. Where's the Navy? I'd guess I'd say the Kid Rot arc. That is probably the most heavy the series gets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you also recommended another episode. I'm trying to remember what it was.
School's grossed out for the summer.
That's the one. Yeah, because that episode, woo! Again,
Everyone is brave till the colon is walking down the hallways.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. And that episode featured a giant sentient colon. For the love of Christ, that just what?
This man was so petty. He had to develop several new sciences just to prove a point.
I want to jump in real quick, because we were talking about the bullet slings that Cartoon Network had, and we liked that show. We liked that episode a lot, because as it goes back to similar stuff that Cartoon Network was doing, particularly in Courage the Cowardly Dog, because I believe, and Barney, you can check me on this. Did a Courage the Cowardly Dog also have an episode like that was similar to that giant sentient colon episode? Yes, absolutely. Courage the Cowardly Dog had a very similar episode where I believe it was a giant sentient colon outside of a stomach.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. That's oh yeah, I remember that episode. That was one of the scariest ones. It was Cabaret Courage. It was basically a man who was so angry he became an ulcer in his own stomach and was eating people.
Yes, exactly. So very similar to a man that created a giant sentient colon outside of a human body. Yeah, and the Kid Rot stuff, the Kid Rot arc, that was one of the best. That was one of the ones that we went back to multiple times, because it goes what you were saying, and that sort of heaviness of a show that definitely brought out some of the heavy stuff, some of the heaviness to the show. And what I will say involving that saga, the one like minor error that I have concerning this show, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, that one was a great arc too. That one was a great arc. Just seeing that whole story play out. So, JC, picture this: you were given the keys to whatever animation studio that Grossology was produced out of, that Canada animation studio you were talking about. Imagine you were given the keys to do whatever you wanted with Grossology. Hey, they would say, hey, if you wanted to reboot it, if you wanted to revise it, if you wanted to continue it, if you wanted to do whatever you want with it, if you had creative control over Grossology, what would you do with it?
Give it a proper ending. The series had lots of villains that didn't get to come back, lots of things that didn't get to be discussed, and most important, didn't have a satisfying conclusion. It just kind of ended with one of the more calm episodes in the series.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the things that I had a little bit of an issue with. Going back to what I was alluding to with the Kid Rot stuff, the one issue that I had with this show was that it left a lot of plots kind of left open-ended. Even just during the one of the show, it left a lot of plot lines open-ended, and Kid Rot was one of them, because to have a character like that has a very traumatic backstory and beginning to it, and B, to have a character that is that powerful. I mean, like, no joke, like OP, like powerful, and C, the fact that we never fully got like that full story, around, we never saw that kind of full circle moment surrounding it. And I guess kind of going to what you're saying, and in the hopes that they were getting another season. But even so, during that time, I mean, it just left so many unopened questions because you think by the end of that saga, when we get to that episode, the king of the Rotherham Forest, as how you they want on us to think that, oh, Kid Rot is gone, he perished, even though we both saw that episode, we know that was not the case. But yeah, just to have all of that, just to have all that in Kid Rot, and just see it, never play out. Uh, I just feel like it was such a wasted, potential in it. You know what I mean?
Hmm. I
Yeah.
really would have loved to have just seen a conclusion. Because out of all the villains, like most of the villains have really sad backstories, but Kid Rot's just hits. It's just the hardest to watch.
100%, 100%. And he even reminded me, going back to Cartoon Network again, you reminded me a lot of, the character in Codename Kids Next Door. What was the name? Heimlich. Do you remember that
Oh
character?
yeah, that got
Ye-
resolved though. It was kind of scary, but it did.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. But that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, and that story is very similar to Kid Rot. The difference is with Kid Rot, we never got that resolve, or whatever resolve would have happened. We just never got that story, and we'll never know where that full story would have led up to. Yeah, you see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Yeah, which does lead me to the question, you'd want to give it a happy ending, and where would you see, that ending, and like where would you see it, like the potential of like new recruits, or like something else happening, or they quit being grossologists, like where do you see that?
Well, I actually feel the best ending for Grossology would just be the fact that what I actually thought would be a really good ending would be all of the villains strike at once to the point of
Mm,
where, because the thing about the Grossology are there are only technically four of them, and their rogues gallery is pretty big, and some of them range on the definitely destructive side. But the fact is, it feels like throughout the series, no one ever bothers to help them. They just go, well, they got it. And then just having people step up and try to help them.
that is true. That is true. What I see is, okay. So the I see this in two ways. It's kind of a double-edged sword. All right, here's what I think that could potentially do with grossology. Because I definitely see like it could go the realm of Transformers Rescue Bots. It's where like it recruited like new new like in that show they recruited new robots to help protect the Earth and all that. That's a story for another podcast episode. So I can definitely see like a possible like spin-off of Grossology where the characters Abby and who was the boy? I forgot the boy's name. Oh, I forgot the boy's name. Um,
Ty?
Ty. Yes, Ty. Yeah, I could definitely see Ty and Abby and Lab Rats training new recruits to be Grossologists themselves. Here's why I think that can't happen. Here's why I don't think it will happen. Because a lot of times, especially nowadays, is shows, particularly children's shows, are determined by advertisers. Censors can do all they want, but at the end of the day, it's advertisers that really make the decision. Because they have the money, they have the power, because they need to sell stuff. They need to sell stuff to help boost the show. I can truly see how it'd be hard to convince parents and to that kids would want to have like Lance Boyle like action figures or like T-shirts featuring the grossologists and their gross missions and when advertisers don't see a market for that, then it kills the show regardless of how well it is or how clever it is or whatever. All right, you see what I'm talking about?
Hmm. I see. Because as a kid, I really wanted a toy goop shooter, so I had to make my own.
Exactly, exactly. Hey, not saying that stuff isn't possible, but it's just very hard to market that to children. I'm sorry. I would like to mention Nickelodeon had slime. Nickelodeon made their own slime, and we saw that. Where does that live? I meant nowadays, ding dongs. I meant nowadays.
Plus, that Nickelodeon slime was really fun back then, but it was absolute nightmare to get out of things and off of things. I think one of my pairs of sandals is still stained with the red slime.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, very tough to market all that stuff, but who knows? Times could change, and society is always changing, and so who knows? Who knows? Maybe there's a future for grossology. I don't know, because it is very interesting, and it was very fascinating to see, fascinating that all that stuff was based on real scientific evidence. As that was a big thing. You never know. You never know. JC, an absolute pleasure to have you here. This was a ton of fun. And I'm so glad that you chose this show. This is great. Where can people find you if they want to see, if they want to find out more about JC? And see, do you have any plugs or like any socials you want
We're
people
still getting all
to
of
bring
that
it to?
set up. The Twitch channel should be ready by June. So will the Twitter. We're still getting everything ironed out on our end. Lots and lots of work to get done, but it shouldn't be too much longer.
And that Twitch stream and Twitter is or would be.
Um, right now you can find me on Twitch as Shaolin King X. The official rebrand will be done very, very, very soon.
Ooh, Shaolin Kin. Is that any reference to Shaolin Showdown?
No, it was a reference to I used to practice Shaolin and I got very, very good at it.
Oh wow, that's impressive. Well, folks, you heard him, Shaolin Kin, and on Twitch, and then the Twitter, or whatever, all that stuff, We'll make sure to have, anything you want to show them in our show notes, JC. And if you want to check out Grossology, the entire show is free on streaming platforms. I believe all the seasons are available on YouTube under the Keep It Weird YouTube channel. And of course, if you're liking this podcast, rate, review, and subscribe to Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if you're listening to the video version or watching the video version, then subscribe to our YouTube channel where we have a ton of other animation like that. Not to the level of Grossology, I'm afraid, but it's still fun. Check it out. For our guest JC, for my co-host SpongeBob One Spun Balloon, I am your host Barney the Dinosaur, saying good luck and be sure to put your toys away when you're done with them. That first line did not pick up at all, but I'm using that last line. Be sure to put your toys away when you're done with them. That'll be a good hook. Anyway, we will see you next time on Talking Tunes with Toys.